hello. Join me on the adventure and welcome to the Mysterious Adventures Podcast. I am your host, Paladino Joey, or Joey Awajan. Mysterious Adventures is available on all of your favorite podcasting apps. I thank each and every one of you once and always for downloading and listening to the show. It is a great pleasure to be back and board with you once again today. I deeply apologize for the hiatus. It's just been kind of a tough go when it comes to just being able to record and get back on the air. I've been kind of busy with the whole two-job situation. Just other things coming up at times as well. You know how life gets in the way. So my deep apologies. Hopefully you're still with me listening to the show. As today we are going to get into one of the Greek mythology type of characters in the past, which I do believe was a real Nephilim Giant type of a person, a man of renown, Achilles. So in Greek mythology, Achilles, or Achilles, ancient Greek basically right there, was a hero of the Trojan War who was known as being the greatest of all the Greek warriors. Again, men of renown. The central character in Homer's Iliad, he was the son of Nereid Thetis and Peleus, king of Pytha, and famous Argonaut. Yep, that's a famous word that they talk about. So the talk is that, Peleus obviously was a real person, and, well, the other character out there that could be his mother was a sea nymph. Meaning, well, at the end of the day, what does that tell you? More than likely, it's some kind of a chimera, possibly, or, again, a fallen angel of some sorts. More than likely, because why would Achilles have such incredible power? Why would he be the most powerful warrior during the Trojan War? So, obviously, there's more to this than meets the eye, and it's not a human being. So it's a combination of a person, the king, Peleus, and of course a nymph, a sea nymph. So how does that work? I don't know. It had to have been some type of a fallen angel of some sorts. So in this case, it would be a female. So it's kind of going in the opposite direction, which obviously that's been a debate in so many ways for so many times. This is a more of a unique situation here when you hear about the sons of God getting with the daughters of men. In this case, it's like a daughter of God with a son of man. I don't know. I don't know. So kind of different in a lot of ways. Very strange here. And I'll talk about some more when it comes to Achilles also appearing in a famous video game that I mentioned earlier as well, regarding the Nazca line. So hint, hint, Shining Force 2 of Sega Genesis again. Achilles' most notable feat during the Trojan War was the slaying of the Trojan prince Hector outside of the gates of Troy. So there's Troy, kind of a mythological but a real city. It's real, but there's like mythological conversation with it, and a lot of times a lot of this mythological stuff ends up being real. It's just that it's like, it seems out there, but if you open your mind to reality and how there were giants in the land in the Bible, well, there were giants out there, obviously, with these ungodly mixes of angelic beings and humans. So this stuff really did happen. So it's not as unbelievable when you put a lot of that together, rather than just talk about the whole, just parts of the Bible you want to talk about rather than all of it. Anyhow, although the death of Achilles is not presented in the Iliad, other sources concur that he was killed near the end of the Trojan War by Paris, who shot him with an arrow. That's all it took, huh? Interesting. Later legends, beginning with Statius, doesn't get much easier, does it? Unfinished epic Achilliad, written in the 1st century. So 1st century CE, which usually means BC, doesn't it? So I don't know why. Let's just say BC. The state that Achilles was invulnerable in all of his body except for one heel. So they talk about the Achilles heel. That's where that infamous line comes from. The Achilles heel. So that was his weakness for some reason. According to that myth, when his mother, there it is, Thetis dipped him in the river Styx. So that's where maybe the name of the band Styx came from. STYX, a famous band from Chicago in the 70s and 80s. Styx, like Double Arigato, Mr. Roboto, yeah, that. And Come Sail With Me in the 70s. Mr. Roboto, of course, the early 80s, right around that Atari, when Atari was really still very much around. Anyhow, the river Styx, as an infant, she held him by one of his heels, leaving it untouched by the waters, and thus his only vulnerable body part. So I guess in a lot of ways that was Achilles' kryptonite, I guess, was one of his heels. So whenever you hear about that's your Achilles heel. So there it is. Alluding to these legends, the term Achilles heel has come to mean a point of weakness, which can lead to downfall, especially in someone or something with an otherwise strong constitution. The Achilles tendon is named after him following the same legend. So yes, of course, it makes sense, the Achilles tendon. And you hear about Achilles all the time, unfortunately, in the NBA, the NFL at times. Kirk Cousins locally with the Achilles tendon. Why am I blanking? It's a guy I like so much. Cam Akers, yeah, poor guy, nice running back. Started off with the Los Angeles Rams, came to the Vikings. He had an Achilles tendon, a pop on him in his second year. I believe, yeah, his rookie year, he got through the year. His second year, he got hurt like the first game of the season, or was it the preseason, something like that. I think it was the season opener. Somehow was able to come back for the actual Super Bowl, because the Rams went to the Super Bowl and won it. That is in his second year, and he got to play in that game, which is pretty cool, and he got a ring. Came to the Vikings later on, or it was 2 years later, because he played the next year with the Los Angeles Rams. Came to the Vikings, and then he tore his other Achilles with the Vikings. It was just so sad. I just felt heartbroken, because he was a nice running back. So, interesting. I just talk about Achilles there. Not Scottie Pippen, thankfully for him. No, Kobe Bryant tore his Achilles, Patrick Ewing, all these famous athletes. So, you just keep hearing Achilles, 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 Achilles. The Achilles heel. Yep, well, Achilles tendon, unfortunately. And boy, is it ever a weakness when it does pop. It's a very, very, very powerful tendon, but if it pops, obviously your calf just kind of rolls up like a curtain or a carpet or whatever you want to use the terminology. I'd say it's kind of like a curtain. When you pull the curtain down, it goes, because that's how old school curtains would do it sometimes. The ones that, they block out the sun, of course. They come up that way. They roll up. That's pretty much what happens. Well, yeah, Aaron Rodgers had an Achilles. Yeah, I mean, it's just, you could go on and on and on. You could hear about people. Whenever you hear the word Achilles, it's like, oh, no. Oh, that sucks. That's like a calendar year, maybe, not even being able to play. It's just like, oh, man. It's depressing. Even Dominique Wilkins had one with the Atlanta Hawks years ago. It's just, oh, no. It's one of my all-time favorite basketball players was Dominique Wilkins. So, yep, it can be career derailing for certain players. Obviously, Cam Akers wasn't a star much after that. He wasn't really a star anyway. He was a good running back, but not a star, just very smooth. So kind of off topic, I apologize. But it's just that you hear Achilles all the time. And you get confused with the BCE. Yeah, see, BCE does mean before. So, yep, some of the conversations Achilles, so obviously we're talking over 2,000 years ago during the Trojan War is when Achilles was around, and Troy and all that stuff, all kinds of parts of Greek mythology and such, but like actual true stories, like, well, truth in terms of like Troy really existed. And obviously it sounds weird to think of like there was a king, like a normal man, Peleus, I apologize, and Thetis, which was it's very strange, like a sea goddess. So that's what they also talked about. Well, yep. Mythological roles and such. Sea nymph. Yep, that's what I thought. A goddess of water. So, again, it's a female angel. That's what it is. I mean, it is what it is, and it does explain why Achilles would have such strength, per se. That's why Achilles would have such strength. He was basically he was basically invulnerable because he was a Nephilim Giant. There's no doubt about it. There isn't much talk about his actual height in here, but very powerful. Now, in Shining Force 2 on the Sega Genesis, he's like a gigantic statue. He's so dang big. He can hardly move. Now, it's a different, it's a video game and all that, so you just kind of go with it as is, but he's pretty much invulnerable in that game. I forget what his weakness was there, but I think it was similar, where it's like just one little spot. If you could somehow get there, you can beat him. It's not an action game, it's a strategy RPG. Shining Force is more like a strategy simulation type of RPG, where it's kind of like, okay, this person moves here, and this person moves there, and then their arrows can shoot there, and you have to get hand to hand to be able to use your sword, and, it's one of those kind of games. Shining Force, a great, great series of games for the Sega Genesis, or Sega in general, but Sega Genesis especially, because that's really when the better games were out. Shining Force 1, Shining Force 2, the Game Gear and the Sega CD as well were pretty good versions for that series. But Achilles was a very powerful character in that, and it's like, that's a Nephilim giant, isn't it? I mean, that thing was huge. It looked like somebody that was about 15 to 30 feet tall, probably, like 20 feet, maybe. Absolute monster of a man or statue or whatever. It was like a statue-looking figure, but it was alive. So, to me, that's what that is. It was a Nephilim giant, no doubt about it. Also, Achilles, when you talk about talking about it in Greek, some researchers deem the name loan word, possibly from a pre-Greek language. Achilles' descent from Nereid Thetis, and a similarity of his name with the river deities, such as Acheron and Atlas, not Atlas, but Achilles, have led to speculation about his being an old water divinity. So that's kind of weird and such. Other conversations. So there's all kinds of confusion and such, because, well, a lot of this stuff it's a kind of, like myth and legend. It's a combination of myth and legend, where legend can be real. Myth is generally, you think of it like it's made up, but a lot of this comes to the fact that this kind of stuff did happen, where like a human being and an angel, a quote-unquote goddess with a small g, of course, would get together. When you hear about a goddess, it's a fallen angel. It's a fallen angel. It is. It's a fallen angel. There is no goddess. It's a fallen angel. So it's a small g type of god or goddess, that type of thing, and that's how you get these extremely powerful men of renown. And that's what Achilles was, a man of renown. He was in the BC era, but definitely a fascinating character, to say the least, considering he was more of an invulnerable one, and of course he was that also in Shining Force. Just an absolute giant of a man. Again, it's fascinating as well. So the Trojan Prince Paris, again, shot him in the heel. So it's strange. Who knows if that's real? And in a lot of ways, when it comes to the Nephilim, usually the best way to kill a Nephilim, because they could always seem to heal themselves again. Invulnerable, they'd get a hit, but then they'd be healed because they could heal themselves, was cutting their head off. That's, of course, why King David, he wasn't the king yet, Shepherd David, before he was King David, cut Goliath's head off after he'd stunned him with the stone in the forehead. It was the only way that David could accomplish such a feat, is to stun him, and again, by God's grace, of course, the stone hit Goliath in the exact spot that caused him to be stunned to a point he was basically probably like knocked out. He passed out, blacked out, and David was able to cut his head off with his own sword, cut Goliath's head off with his own gigantic sword. Fascinating to think of David being able to pick up such a powerful weapon, such a big, strong weapon, because, well, you got to have enough strength to even be able to hold the doggone thing to accomplish such a feat. Must have been a very sharp sword as well, and I'm sure it was. I can imagine Goliath successfully slicing people's heads off as he was, walking by them in a battle many years ago, kind of like a soldier ant. In like when you see carpenter ants, that's what kind of also makes me think of like what a Nephilim person, a Nephilim man, a Nephilim soldier would have been like in an army against regular human beings. See, there's carpenter ants, they're those black ants that, get into trees and such. And then in that same group of ant, the carpenter ants, there's the soldier carpenter ant, the soldier ant. It's a soldier, but it's the same group. And they're about 2 to 3 times the size of a regular ant, and they're about 2 to 3 times stronger. It's horrifying what they can do. Scary. And it's like, say, ants from different nests or whatever come by, and it would just be like, it would just kind of boom, like bite the ant, and the ant would just collapse to the ground dead. I used to, unfortunately, I'm ashamed to say this, I used to put them in the bug bottle together, which is really mean. I mean mean, and my mom used to say, how would you like that, Joey, to be put in a room with a giant, that can just kill you in a second, basically. And that's pretty much what it was like. And I can imagine that's what it would have been like battling a Nephilim, and that's why people were so scared without God's grace to be there. And that's why David was able to accomplish what he did, and thankfully, again, Joshua and Caleb had faith in God, and that's how they were able to defeat Jericho. That's how they were able to win the day with Jericho as well, because Jericho was filled with giants. A lot of people don't know that. They thought it's just, okay, and that's why God said wipe them all out. It wasn't because, it's like the Emperor in Star Wars, wipe them out, all of them. No, it's because they're giants. They're not regular human beings. They got to go. Why do you think the flood happened? Because they got to go. That type of thing. But they continued to escape and spread around the world, unfortunately, to places like North America, but they did not populate the world like they did back before the flood. So that's the difference. That's why there's been no flood since then. And I tend to get back into that every time we talk about a Nephilim type of a character. And we'll probably kind of review that oftentimes when we get into an Achilles, a Hercules, well, Zeus, I believe, is more of a fallen angel type of a character, but maybe he was a Nephilim as well. But we'll read deeper and deeper into that, other conversations as well. So, obviously, again, there's too much going on. Sorry. Try to pull these up. Yep. Greek hero Achilles, one of the most famous figures in Greek mythology. Yep. Key character in the Trojan War. So, a lot of the similar stuff. Now, they talk about, I don't know where Zeus is coming into this one. But, yep, he's more with Nephilim. He's more with Mr. Hercules. We'll get into him next, eventually, someday in the future. But a lot of this was most likely real. That's the scary part. A lot of this was most likely real. Did Achilles have a male lover? Yikes, what? I suppose. As a boy, Achilles develops a close relationship with another boy named Patroclus, who joins Achilles' household as an exile, having accidentally killed another child. They become friends and possibly lovers. In Homer's Iliad, Achilles describes Patroclus as the man I love beyond all other comrades, loved as my own life. That doesn't necessarily mean that, because I know David and Jonathan were like that, and they weren't lovers. They just very much, it's okay. It's possible you can have a friend that you just love and appreciate so much. It's possible. It's possible. That doesn't mean you are lovers. That doesn't mean you're sex partners or anything like that. So I'm just my opinion from reading that. I'm thinking probably not. Probably not. I mean, again, David and Jonathan loved each other, but they weren't lovers. You're just close enough friends that you love each other to death, that kind of thing. Interesting. Although Homer doesn't explicitly cast them as lovers, their intimate relationship is crucial to the plot of the Iliad, and in other works of ancient literature, the relationship between the two men is more explicitly referenced to as a love affair. In ancient Greece, it was common for men to have sexual relationships with both men and women, so bisexual. I guess it didn't just come out of a hat one day in 1973 or something. So I guess there were no words in ancient Greek for homosexual, but if it's men and women, that's bisexual, homosexual and heterosexual. And in classic Athens, relationships between older, often married men and younger men were a normal part of social life. So they were not following the Bible at all, because they weren't. They just weren't. Obviously, there was a lot of sin in a lot of ways. So that's the way things go there. Interesting. Why did Achilles' parents try to stop him going to Troy? A prophecy had foretold that Achilles would die at Troy, so when the Greek leaders gathered for their campaign to return the abducted Helen, Achilles' parents attempt to prevent him joining the expedition. He is hidden in the island of Skyros, disguised as a girl at the court of King. This just gets weirder and weirder. Lycomedes among his numerous daughters. This is just getting weirder and weirder. Oh, man. However, due to another prophecy, the Greeks know that they can only win the war with Achilles' help. Well, yeah, he's their Goliath, right? Yeah. The Greek king, there we go. like Odysseus and Diomedes discover his whereabouts and trick him into revealing himself so he can join the troops on the expedition to Troy. Disguised as traveling salesmen, they visit the court with jewelry and women's clothes. Amongst these goods, they place weapons which Achilles instinctively grabs and is found out. Interesting. Weird. What did Achilles do in the Trojan War? Achilles arrives at Troy with 50 ships. 50 ships. He is the leader of the army known as the Myrmidons and is the best fighter on the side of the Greeks. Well, yeah, I think he was. Troy is a well-defended city, like Jericho, right? And 9 long years of siege followed. 9 years. Wowzers. That's a long time. This is cool, too. There's a jar you can see here. This is on BritishMuseum.org, by the way. So, setting my sources here, because that's the best thing to do. The epic poem, it's very epic, right? Which covered this part of the war. The Cypria does not survive, so its events are known in much less detail. That's unfortunate. In art, a popular scene was that of Achilles playing a board game with hero Ajax. So that's like that's a suburb of Toronto, Ontario, isn't it? Ajax, okay. Sure. The image suggests that the Greek hero spent many long hours whittling away the time during the siege of Troy. Things only really get interesting during the 10th year of the war, 10th bleeping year, which is the focus for Homer's Iliad. The rage of Achilles, huh? What caused the rage of Achilles? There, we check this out real quick. Might as well. The anger or rage of Achilles is a key theme of Homer's Iliad. In fact, anger is the first word of the whole poem. Achilles is initially angry because the leader of the Greek forces, King Agamemnon, takes captive women named Briseis from him. Early Greek society was highly competitive, and a man's honor was vital to his sense of identity and position. Yeah, kind of like status. Yeah. But anyhow, by taking away the prize of honor that has been allocated to Achilles in recognition of his fighting prowess, Agamemnon dishonors him. Well, that son of a gun. Achilles withdraws from battle and refuses to fight. When the Trojans make gains in the battle, Agamemnon agrees to send an embassy to Achilles to try to persuade him to rejoin the fighting by offering him a wealth of gifts. Achilles remains unmoved, but does allow his friend Patroclus to lead the Myrmidons into battle wearing Achilles' armor. Excuse me. Patroclus is killed in the bloody fighting by the Trojan prince Hector, who mistakes him for Achilles, and the real Achilles is utterly distraught. His mother Thetis consoles him, and Achilles declares his intention to kill Hector and avenge the death of Patroclus, despite his weeping mother's revelation that, according to fate, his own death will soon follow that of Hector. And that's pretty much what happened. Interesting. Yeah, interesting. Dare we move on? Well, we can try. Well, we can try indeed. What did he do to avenge? Achilles is determined to avenge Patroclus' death at any cost and announces that he is ending his anger against Agamemnon and will rejoin the fighting. The two sides meet in battle, and Hector waits outside the city gates to fight Achilles. Woo! Achilles chases Hector around the wall of the city. Sounds like Jericho, right? But it's not. Then the two heroes fight, and Achilles plunges his spear into Hector's neck. While he lies dying, Hector appeals to Achilles to return his body for cremation. So that was already around back that long ago. A request that is heartlessly refused. And with his last breath, he prophesies Achilles' own death at the hands of the Trojan Prince Paris. Well, all right. Sounds accurate to me, doesn't it? Achilles, with his lust for revenge still not satisfied, deliberately mistreats the body of Hector, tying him to his chariot and dragging him behind in the dirt as he drives back to the Greek camp. Yikes. Yeesh. Why does Achilles return the body of Hector? Following the funeral of Patroclus, Achilles' grief makes him restless. He ties Hector's body to the chariot and repeatedly drags it around the tomb of Patroclus in his furious need for retribution. However, the small g gods protect Hector's body so that, in spite of his cruel treatment, it remains unblemished. That's really interesting. Eventually, Hector's father, Priam, with the assistance of the small god Hermes, makes the dangerous journey to the Greek camp to see Achilles and beg for the return of his son's corpse for burial. Their emotional encounter is powerfully depicted in this silver cup, which allows Priam coming to Achilles and kissing his hands. Interesting for that. Yep, kissing his hands. Okay. Crazy. The two men weep together and share a meal. In a transformation of character which restores humanity to the hero and a sense of order to the world, Achilles agrees to release Hector's body. As dawn breaks, Priam returns to Troy with Hector's body, and the funeral marks the end. So what really did happen at the end, again, Achilles is killed by an arrow shot by the Trojan Prince Paris. So apparently that all kind of came to happen. How that works, I don't know. Obviously we talked about it earlier, but it sounds pretty weird at the end of the day. Not everything is probably 100% true. Like, there really was a Santa Claus, but he was St. Nicholas. Yeah, we could probably do a mysterious adventure. That's kind of a spoiler alert. We'll probably do that around Christmas time. Maybe. Why not? Of course, that would be our first Christmas, because this show started in early February this past year. So this year, 2025. So, yeah, maybe we'll talk about St. Nicholas. Nudge, nudge, hint, hint. So, yeah, we already talked about some of this, but we can read it one last time. Achilles is killed by an arrow shot by the Trojan Prince Paris. In most versions of the story, the small g god Apollo, which also is a fall, that's absolutely a fallen angel, Apollo or Apollyon, hello, is said to have guided the arrow to his vulnerable spot, his heel. In one version of the myth, Achilles is scaling the walls of Troy and about to sack the city when he is shot. In other accounts, he is marrying the Trojan princess, Polyxena, that's got to be what it is, and supposedly negotiating an end of the war when Paris fires the shot that kills him. So that would be kind of a cheap one. That's a low blow, Mr. Paris. After his death, Achilles is cremated, and his ashes are mixed with those of his dear friend Patroclus. The Odyssey describes a huge tomb of Achilles on the beach at Troy, and Odysseus meets Achilles during his visit to the underworld. Ugh, well, that's not heaven, is it? Among a group of dead heroes. Well, pretty wild story. What do you think? Well, I do think he was a Nephilim Giant, at the very least. Some of it might be a little bit exaggerated. Some of it might be myth and legend. Achilles' heel, where does that really truly come from? But that's where it comes from. Could that have actually been the true way that Nephilim was killed? But I guess, a Nephilim Giant has to have a weakness somewhere, somehow. But again, generally speaking, like I talked about earlier, usually it involves cutting the Nephilim's head off to prevent him from being able to heal. So, interesting stuff, to say the least. Hope you didn't mind this story. Might have been a little bit out there, but I guess that's what we're here for. That's why it's very mysterious. It's a mysterious adventure. And, definitely I'm not a believer in terms of, I do believe it's real, but I'm not a follower. I'm not a worshiper of Greek mythology in any way, shape, or form. I'm a follower of God, the one true God, of course, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Yes. And Jesus, of course. Yes. The Holy Trinity. So with all of that said, yeah, fascinating stuff. Now, I would like to, again, have guests on where it's not just me looking at stories and such, even though it's fun. This is kind of like a Dusty Tome type of episode on the Haunted Cosmos, very similar to the Dusty Tome episodes. So in this case, this is more of, well, yeah, that's basically what it's kind of like. It'd be nice to, again, have guests on that have stories to tell. It really would. Stories about maybe paranormal situations. Maybe you saw, maybe you saw a UFO. You have a really interesting, crazy story to talk about, and you're more than welcome on the show if and when you're willing to do that. To get in touch with me, PaladinoLive@yahoo.com, PaladinoLive@yahoo.com, and you're also welcome to do PaladinoLive@gmail.com. Either one of those to get in touch with me. Of course, the Instagram, the Facebook page, the thread, Instagram, Facebook, thread, Twitter, Twitter/X are all in the show description if you'd like to contact me there to get in touch to tell your story and take us on an adventure. Bring us on an adventure. It would really be great. Bring the listeners on an adventure, because I think I can make this show better and better and better rather than just me doing all the talking. I'd love to hear from you. Even call-ins. If it's like a 5-minute story or something, you want to call in with an audio submission, 5 or 10-minute or 20-minute story, whatever it is, you're more than welcome to do that. 20 minutes, yeah, you can do that. I doubt many people are going to do that, but you can. Again, you just use your smart device or your laptop, whatever you use. You can use your smart device or laptop and then email it to PaladinoLive@yahoo.com or PaladinoLive@gmail.com. Either one of those are available, and I would greatly and graciously accept. As long as it's on topic, you're not talking about, your kid's karate class or something, or hip-hop dance class, but actually on topic, yeah, which I'm sure you would be, I would hope, at the end of the day. So, would be great. Would love to hear your adventure. Please tell us your adventure and bring us on board. That's what we want here on Mysterious Adventures. Let's go on an adventure together, because that's what it's all about. Please do give a 5-star rating for this episode. Click like. There is a YouTube page as well, Mysterious Adventures 79, Mysterious Adventures 79 on the YouTube. We really need to get some love there, get some subscriptions. I go on some adventures outside into the possibly into the, looking at what I believe could be potential mounds. I think they're fascinating stuff out there. And yeah, Mysterious Adventures 79 on YouTube. There's, again, a link in the show description as well, and it would be great. It would be great if you could subscribe to that, and, well, you can even interact with me on there as well if you want to, but try to get that page growing and moving in the right direction. With that said, thank you, and of course, crush the like button on the videos. With that said, thank you again so much for listening, and let's go on an adventure together once again.